I'd like to introduce you to Pete Calleja, who is a Korean War veteran.
How you doing, Joe? How are you?
Doing good. Good to see you. So tell me, your parents were from Spain.
Yeah, they were immigrants from Spain. My dad, and they, in fact, they never knew each other. My mother and dad never knew each other when they were in Spain as growing up as kids. Mm-hmm. But when he came here, he corresponded with her, and she actually got married by proxy. My dad's brother stood in for her, so she could come here as a bride, as already married.
Oh, I didn't know they could do that.
I guess that was the old tricks of getting your wife over here at that time if you weren't married yet.
So you grew up in Farrell.
I grew up in Farrell, and I graduated in 1948.
So you were drafted
Right.
in July 1952.
Right.
What was your reaction to that?
Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had just started working. I had a job down at the mill. I'm thinking, Jesus, this is going to turn my life really upside down here,
Yeah.
But I took my basic training in Fort Riley, Kansas, which was the start of a journey that was, to me, a very lonely one, because when we went down to Pittsburgh for the induction center, everybody else went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. I think it was 9 of us from Farrell.
Yeah.
8 of them went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Luckily, I could pick the pick of the draw. I went to Fort Riley, Kansas.
So you were more important.
So either that or I was, again, on a lonely venture.
Yeah. So at Fort Riley, what branch of the service? Was it infantry?
It was infantry.
Okay.
And my other buddies, when they went into the armored, they were down at Fort Knox.
Okay.
And I have Fort Riley really turned out to be a really nice place to grow up in, as far as training.
Mm-hmm.
The people treated you, the civilian population. I don't know, you hear some sad stories of these Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
But the people in Kansas, and I can't speak for the other army posts that might have been like that, but in Kansas, they had you get on Saturday afternoon, you'd go on pass. You weren't allowed to hitchhike, but they had a place on Route 40 which went through Fort Riley. They would have like a post, like a sentry post, and the guys would be there. Heck, there would be 100 people out there waiting, and no hitchhike. You walk up to that post, and you stood there, and somebody would pick you up. The nicest part was during the holidays. The farmers out there, the soldiers that lived too far away to go home for a weekend on Thursday, on a Thanksgiving Day, they would come down to the company, and they'd pick 3, 4, 5 guys up and take them to their home for Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas.
So did you have basic and advanced AIT there?
Basic and advanced. Then after basic training, again, my soul movement went. Everybody of my buddies, 60% went to Korea, 40% of them went to Germany. I was pulled out and sent back to Fort Riley for leadership school.
Oh.
So again, I was all my buddies were gone, and I'm by myself again. That was a history of my my days in the armies.
Yeah.
A lonely warrior, I'll tell you.
Yeah. On the ship, you weren't lonely though. You served as a chaplain on the ship on the way over.
Yeah, we loaded on the ship, and about the day after the day we're leaving port, they started on the intercom system. Anybody that was a altar boy, Catholic boy, a soldier here that's been an altar boy, would you please report to the chaplains? Well, heck, I learned, don't volunteer, But, third day late, second day, then the third day, they're still with that same announcement. So I said, God, all right, maybe the guy needs help. So I went up there, and what it was, they didn't have a chaplain. The chaplain, then when the ship got ready to leave, the chaplain had an epidectomy.
Oh.
So the Protestant priest,
minister, yeah.
He wanted someone to sort of keep the Catholic, to give some kind of Well, I told him, I said, now I can read the epistle, I can read the gospel to them. I said, I can lead them in the rosary, but I can't give them communion.
Yeah, of course not.
I said, but the best part was that I got to stay in the chaplain's quarters.
Oh, there you go.
And then that sure beat that hole that I was in down in the,
Yeah, I believe that.
We went for Camp Drake. We got off at Camp Drake in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for 10 days getting shots and taking you out to a rifle range, giving you one clip of ammo, zero in your rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And then we loaded up on the ship and went to Busan. And then when we got to Busan, they gave you a rifle. And I looked at mine. I said, "This ain't mine." He says, "It's a rifle, buddy." So I said, "Why did I go to the Camp Drake to zero my weapon and not get the same weapon back?"
Yeah, that's crazy. You arrived, you were with the 7th Infantry Division?
Company B, 17th Infantry Regiment.
Okay. So then from Busan, where did you go?
Well, from Busan, we got on a truck and took the superhighway, the dirt road. And
Soupy Highway.
And we went to, well, it was on the MLR. At that time, Korea had become a stagnant battlefield.
Okay, yeah.
It had, it was no movement whatsoever. Tanks were naturally dug in on the top of the hill and used as pillboxes.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a valley in front of you and all the outposts. And everybody was just fighting over these outposts.
Mm-hmm.
Baldy, you can name it, Baldy, Port Charles, Arsenal, and little hills that looking at it, I can't figure out what those hills were fought for. And then it ended up that Port Charles ended up Chinese. When the truce was signed,
Yeah.
they had control of Port Charles.
Yeah. Now you have down here something about Chinese prisoner.
That's in a story in itself. That was the most scary moment in Korea for me, believe it or not.
Oh.
We had gotten, at that time I was with the Colombian Army.
Mm-hmm.
And they had gotten a prisoner. So I was assigned to take him back to regimental headquarters. And they gave you a tag. And you would present it, and they would sign you off and bring this, that you had delivered a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
So that there wouldn't be where you take the prisoner down a half a block and then shoot him.
Yeah.
So we're going down to regimental headquarters, and I'm sitting in the back of the Jeep. I had the prisoner in front of me and next to the driver, but we had his hands tied behind the chair. And going down the road, all of a sudden these 3 Koreans step off from behind a large tree. They were sitting under there, and they got up and they came up on the road and stopped us. And I knew them to be South Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, the one spoke pretty good broken English, but he made himself perfectly clear.
Mm-hmm.
that he'd take the prisoner off of us. And I says, no, this isn't, you're not going to. And I'm sitting in the back. I had an M1,
Mm-hmm.
and I also had a revolver, which was my basic weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they'd take him, and I says, no, I got to deliver him. I said, I got to sign. He said, oh, I sign, and I'll sign
Oh,
for
yeah,
him.
right.
I says, no, I take him. Well, you could see their eyes that they weren't playing games, and this was no joke. At first, I thought it was. And they started putting their rifles up at the position that you don't like to see it aimed at you.
Yeah.
I said, man, so I told the driver, I says, move this thing out. He said, what am I going to do there in front of me? I says, run him over. I said, but you got to get. I said, we're not giving this guy up. So I stood up, pulled out my .45, and I says, look, there's no use you and me shooting each other. We're on the same side. What the heck's the problem here? But to me, I thought I was going to die that morning,
Mm-hmm.
that day. I really did. It's the most. It's amazing to say that was my scariest moment in Korea.
Yeah.
And then I thought, God Almighty, I'm going to get shot by an ally. But that was. They finally let me go. And then on the way back, after we had delivered them, they're on the side of the road, still there, and I'm go by, and they're waving at me. And I didn't trust the Koreans one iota. When I was with the with my squad, I was a BAR man.
Okay.
And I would carry 50 pounds of ammo with those clips, with 20-round clips.
The BAR was heavy enough by
And,
itself.
and that was 19 and a half pounds.
Yeah.
And one of the Koreans was assigned to be my ammo bearer to help. He would carry a load too, so that we would have 2 complete loads of ammo. And one day we were going out on a patrol. One night we were going out on a patrol, so while it was still light, we went out to the LD. We lined a departure, wait till dark, so that your eyes would get accustomed to the dark. And we had unloaded our gears to relax for about an hour while we were there. So then when the sergeant said CZAC, he was a trip. He was a real warrior. The man was a real warrior. His dad died. Well, he lived in Idaho, and his dad died. And then Red Cross went to come and pick him up. And he was on the second tour in Korea to boot. And he would only go if they promised to bring him back. So this guy was a warrior. Well, when we get ready to move out of the patrol, I went over there and picked up my belt. And, geez, I must be getting strong, you know. I pick up that belt. No, that ain't my belt. That was the Korean's belt. He had 2 rounds in every clip. He looked at the clip. It looked like it was full. And I was going to kill him. I mean, I was so ticked off. And CZAC, I thought he was going to kill him. He was going to shoot him. I thought he was going to really shoot him. He pulled out his .45 and he was going to shoot him. And I screamed, "Oh, no."
So you mentioned you were with the Colombian Army. Tell me about that.
Well, that was probably the highlight of my Korean days. The Colombians didn't speak English. And what was happening was that every time they'd go on a patrol and they'd run into an American patrol, to the Americans, they sound Chinese. Spanish is, you know, hey, padre, compadre, you know, that didn't go there, you know. So they were shooting at each other at a horrible rate. So I got called. How they did it, I don't know. Evidently, they went through all these personnel records to find out anybody that spoke Spanish, because the Colombians didn't. They told the Colombians they were going to give them the interpreters. Well, they called for me to go down the regiment, and I said, "Oh man, here I go." So I go down there, and it's Lieutenant Colonel talking to me, and he says, and I'm sitting there, and I walk in, and there's these 3 guys sitting there. They got more stars on them than you can shake a stick at, but I realized that 1 star was a second lieutenant, 2 stars was a captain. I said, "Holy man, all these generals there, you know." But the colonel says that I was going to be transferred to the Colombians. I said, "You know, no." I said, I'm an American." He's told me the story about how they're getting conflicted into, and we're shooting each other. He says, and that's we can't have that. And he says, but we want you to volunteer. I said, no. So he says, well, would you do me one thing? The colonel says, and he says, would you be willing to go there for 1 month? After a month, you want to get back, I promise you that I'll bring you back. I don't think he would have kept his promise anyhow. But it turned out to be a very, really, really enjoyable part of my Korean experience with these Colombians.
Enjoyable how?
Well, I thought they were tight. They were a really tight unit. They all came together. Being with the Colombians, I went on patrol almost every night. And they always put me in the position where I was not in the least amount of danger that patrol, you know.
Yeah.
They really took care of me. They knew that I was important to them and as anything else. But they were every night they would get down in groups, 6, 8, get in their bunkers, and they recite the rosary. Every morning they line up outside and pledge allegiance the Colombian Pledge of
Yeah.
Allegiance. I mean, they were just the discipline was unbelievable. I mean, any small infraction that was, they used to call them second corporals. He was like a god. I mean, he would hammer you if you did something wrong. I mean, he would. And the first sergeant was brutal. Yeah, I mean, he could walk around with a baton, and if you did something that wasn't improper, he let you know. He'd slap you across the side of the face with that baton. But they loved them. Everybody, they loyalty to that first sergeant or to their commanders, to their leaders. It was amazing. I used to think, my goodness gracious, these guys wouldn't survive in the American Army. They think they died and went to heaven. But it was an experience, the most enjoyable one.
And you say they said the rosary every night. You say they're basically very religious.
Very, very, and they were all Catholics, of course. And very, very religious, and they would die for each other. I mean, they would literally die for each other. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
And how long were you with them then?
I went with them in May 14th, and until I returned home.
Oh, is that right? So you decided to stay with them?
Well, yeah. I knew it wasn't me. I could just see that, telling that colonel, no, I want to go back. Yeah. No.
You didn't think that would happen?
But it took me about a day to figure out I like these guys.
Mm-hmm.
They just took me right in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then
So
I loved them.
Did you see a lot of combat?
More enough. Yeah.
Enough,
And, April 17th, 18th, 19th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, that 3-4 day stretch there on Port Chop, it was just a continuous on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Company after company going up there and getting pushed off, getting back on. And it was rain. It rained an awful lot during that period.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a quagmire, and even just to go in, it got to where it was really difficult going up and down there after a while.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we got off of there was, I think, 16 bunkers on Port Chop with trenches connecting them. The trenches were 7 foot high.
Mm-hmm.
When it was over, you couldn't hide. You couldn't lay down on the trench and be covered. I mean, they were all. My dad had cut out from a Time magazine an article about Korea, about the Battle of Port Chop, and it said that the Americans had fired 77,000 rounds, and they said the Chinese almost about the same amount of rounds. And you can't imagine 150,000 rounds of artillery landing on a hill that it was it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Baldy, they pulverized it. It was powder.
Mm-hmm.
You walk on there, you were almost knee deep in powder.
Wow.
I had to go up with some of the Colombians. They went back to see if they can find a couple of their people that were unaccounted for from the Battle of Baldy. And we went up there, and Baldy was deserted. Neither one wanted it. And I was walking that deep into it had been pulverized so bad.
Strange. You have down here about the children of Korea.
Oh yeah, to me that's the saddest thing is you'd be going through a town, and these kids are coming out there. I used to carry extra sea rations, so I would throw out cans of fruit to them. And
So I have a couple of pictures here. I'd like you to just tell me a little bit about it. This is...
Yeah, this picture was taken. We had on my first day on going to my unit, and they were under. The truck had just let us off at the top of this hill, and then we would have to walk down and to the outpost. And we were going that day. We were going to an arsenal. It was called Arsenal. Why I don't know, but it was an outpost that only had 2 squads on it. It couldn't, and he was even. It wasn't even a pimple on the out there. You know, just a. I don't think it was 100 foot high.
Wow.
And again, but there were. Oh, geez, there was writing back there. I didn't realize it. But this is a picture of my first day.
Now, how about this?
Oh, this one's got a story. My assigned to my first bunker had just gotten. My wife, my girlfriend at that time, she said all her mail caught up to me there finally after being and I laid it on top of the bunker, and I was sorting through them so I could read them by date, you know.
Yep.
And next thing I know, the doggone gust of wind come in and blew those suckers down a hill. And I jump out of the trench and I'm running down to the guy screaming at me. He said, stop, don't move. He said, mind.
Oh.
I don't know, I didn't get killed. But he said, no, don't move. He says, we got to retrace your steps. I was like, oh, Jesus. So they decided not to let me move. And I sat out there for probably an hour and a half. It seemed like a day. And they brought somebody over there with the sweeper to sweep the area for me to come back.
So you never got the letters back?
Oh, yeah, I got the letters back.
Anything's worth that.
Oh,
Huh?
Jesus. I would have risked getting blown up for those letters.
How about this?
This was the winter. This was after the war was over, and I was still with the Colombians. They kept me there with them, and this was a rear area for the Colombians. There might be other pictures of the Colombian at that. It shows.
I don't see a lot of pictures of kids.
No, okay, no,
That's about it.
Yeah, boy, there's no
Oh,
picture. There they are.
Oh, okay.
This was the first sergeant, the Colombians, and myself, and the background is their crest, crest type.
Yeah.
And that fellow there, all these Colombian troops that went to Korea were volunteers.
Mm.
And I asked one day, I says, why did you volunteer to come to this place? And he says, I'd rather be here killing Chinese and staying home killing Colombians. I thought, my God.
That is, yeah.
That was his answer to me. I says, fine, here he is.
Now, who's this good-looking guy?
That's when I had hair. Yeah,
like that.
I was good looking. My wife even says that.
Well, my wife still says that. I think she's crazy, but whatever. So you see,
this was my first. When I got out of high school, I was 17. I couldn't get a job down at the mill. So in between that period, until I turned 18, my job at this is the gas station across the street from Our Lady of Fatima.
Oh, okay.
Which is it used to be run by McNaughton's, and now is by Burich. But that was one of my jobs. I come home from Korea. I'd been gone for 12 months, and I stopped at Isley's. Go there, and I was the hero welcoming here, And I walked in, and the guy says, "Hey, Pete, where you been? I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks." I said, "Okay." I never told him I went to Korea.
Seemed like 10 years to you and 2 weeks to him, huh?
Yeah, that's amazing. He said, "Hey, I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks."
Yeah.
But like I said, I said, "Oh, God," I never told him that. Geez, I've been gone for a year.
So you were there in Korea past the armistice.
Yeah. So that they had a point system. You would get 4
Yeah.
points a month if you spent 10 days, I think, on the front line, and you'd need 36 points to rotate, which means you could rotate out of Korea in 9 months. And I was there from February, March, April, May, June, and July, 6 months, and I had 24 points.
Wow.
Because between them and the Colombians were always on the front line. So I said, man, I couldn't. I already had it figured out. I'd be out of here, by September, October at the most. Then when the truce came, all of a sudden the point system went to heck.
Oh.
Then they just changed it to a year. So instead of getting out of there possibly within 9 months, I was tickled that the truce was signed.
I would think.
But no, it was an experience, like I say, that I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm not sorry that I did it. I wish I could have gone with the guys that I
went
took
over
my
with.
basic with.
Yeah.
Those there, you knew them. And in fact, I only saw one of them in Korea. Our company was going up on the position, and they were coming down. We were replacing them, and he was my bunkmate.
Oh.
And I'm saying, "Hey, Howie!" And he comes running over. We hug each other, but there was 5 other guys that took basic that was with him. See, I was the only one there and they didn't. I said, and I remember saying, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Who's with you here?" And he told me. And there was one guy that was in basic training. He'd obviously, his famous words were, "Bite me the butt." Only I'm saying it the easy way,
Right.
And I says, how's he? I said, you got how's biting the butt with you? He said, yeah. He said, guess what? He said, you got shrapnel. Guess where? I guess one of my highlights was seeing Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, I would imagine that would be a highlight.
I took a picture of her, and my grandson looked at it, and he said, "Man, Grandpa," he says, "that is great." He said, "Can I borrow it?" So he took it home, and for Christmas, he brought it back to me. He enlarged it that big, framed it beautifully, and I have it hanging up.
All right. So you came back on a ship with 3,229 soldiers on it?
Yeah, at Gordon. And
So you got married after you came back?
I got discharged April 6th. They discharged me 3 months,
Early,
May,
yeah.
June, July. They
Yeah.
were 3 months earlier because
Right.
they didn't know what the heck to do with a Korean veteran for 3 more months in the
Yeah,
Army. They just
right.
discharged me. April the 6th. By the time I got home, my wife had conspired with my parents. I already had a bungalow next door, and got married on May 8th. We'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary in May, and it's been a great ride. Really, I'm really proud of it. I have 3 kids that are all professional Army. I guess Army proud. You would have to say. Everybody's been in the Army except my wife.
And you stayed in the reserves?
I stayed in the reserves for 35 years.
Wow.
Retired in 1987, and I retired as a battalion command sergeant major.
Well, during your reserve time, where were you assigned? I mean, where did you serve?
I was assigned at Ferrol at the Pendle Caminetti,
Oh, yeah, okay.
and as the company at first, when I first joined the reserves, it was infantry. Then in 1963, it became quartermaster, and then it went into the petroleum supply company.
Yes.
My career ended 2 years before my unit was activated to go to Iraq, and I sort of wished I could have gone with them. I really do, because they were they're family.
I understand.
There was a unity in the reserves that I didn't have in the regular
Right,
army.
Yeah.
The army has been good to me, and hopefully I was good to the army. And I know with my family we've been good to the army too, and they've been good, and the army's been good to us. So,
Mhm.
and I have no regrets.
And you were the 2013 one of the Mercer Memorial Day 500 honorees.
That was a very, very emotional day for me. I mean, it felt, I just can't explain to you the feeling of riding in the back of that convertible and having people waving at you and saying thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, okay. I really appreciate your coming. I find it fascinating.
Well, I
whole
appreciate
story.
you inviting me
And
over
I
for
particularly want to thank you for your service, not only for the Korean War, but as you say, your reserve time practically is in a sense the the better experience.
this. It was, no question about it. Though I don't, like I said, I don't regret having spent my time in Korea, but it's not something that I would want to go through with again.
Well, I can imagine that. Well, anyways, thank you
Okay,
very
June.
much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll talk.